Hello and welcome to the Earthborne Games podcast. I'm your host, Anders Carlson. We have a fun show for you today, and it's the morning time. Usually we record this at around 7 at night, and it's 10:30 in the morning. We're hoping that we have, the caffeine is still working, and we're going to have a little more energy for you. And we've got Andrew Fisher coming in. He's got a new voice. How you doing?
Well, I'm a little sick today, so I have my gravelly voice. But given that my normal voice is so high pitched anyway, I think it's just bringing me more down to normal.
Have you considered maybe recording some cool blues tracks or something with that voice?
Yeah, I'll have to learn how to sing the blues first, though. So the voice might heal before I'm ready.
Dang.
Yeah, missed opportunity.
We were saying you have a nice NPR voice, and I
ride the mic and do my
ride the mic
podcast voice.
Nice.
And we've also got Evan Simonet wearing a beautiful orange shirt.
Yeah. Thank you. I tried to pair it with a green. I don't know. I'm trying to go with earth tones. Andrew, you mentioned our former coworker. Oh, now I'm spacing on his name. We were just talking about him because
Tim Flanders.
Tim Flanders. We're gonna talking about using him as inspiration for an art piece, and I was thinking about how he would always dress in these nice, beautiful earth tones, and I was thinking about that.
You're you're good with color in your art.
Oh, thanks.
But it doesn't really translate to your clothing, from what I can remember.
Oh wow!
Well, that's because in college I wore a lot of Goodwill clothes that were ill-fitting, and just they weren't. I didn't pair things very well together.
Right. You don't care about that kind of thing.
No.
I'm not saying I'm a fashion icon or anything, but I'm loving your look today.
Oh, thanks. I'm trying to wean myself off of flannels.
I remember that being your big thing is flannels, which worked for you. It was great.
Oh, thanks.
So last podcast we named the episode after Evan's eating habits. This week are we going to name our episode after his wardrobe?
No.
Flannel man. And we've got coming in with a Megadeth long sleeve tee, Andrew Navarro. What's up, Andrew?
Hello. I'm doing well. I weaned myself off flannels a long time ago.
Good for you.
I feel like it was one of those times where the thing I wore became fashionable for a while because I wore flannels, and then all of a sudden grunge happened.
Yeah,
everyone was wearing flannels. I'm like, awesome, sweet. I'm finally in style. And then that went out of style, and I kept wearing flannels for a while. But maybe about 15 years of wearing flannels, and eventually it was it's just heavy metal concert T-shirts from here on out.
Did you wear them buttoned up, or did you have them open with
open, of course, or just around
T-shirts?
The waist? Classic grunge fashion. Not even actually wearing the shirt,
but it's there.
If I sit around long enough, the Jinkos I'm wearing will come back in style. Is what you're saying?
Jinkos. They are in style. Huge baggy pants are in fashion.
Well, not as baggy as Jinkos though. Those things.
That's true. Looks like you're wearing a long skirt
and comfortable.
They were absurd. I never went that far. Did you actually?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I was too self-conscious.
Yeah,
I didn't want attention drawn to me.
I had jeans baggy enough to fully cover my shoes, right, all the way up to the toe, but not full Janko level.
You had jeans baggy enough to absorb all the moisture from the ground you're walking on and slowly creep up your pant
gross. Legs. Real gross and ratty on the bottom.
I always love that night after school when your jeans have gotten all shredded in the back and then they've separated, so there's two strings.
Yeah,
and then you cut them off. It's so satisfying. You keep wearing them with this big hole cut out of the back. Oh man, fashion is weird.
But back to Andrew's metal T-shirts. I fully support this wardrobe choice, Andrew, because every time you wear a metal T-shirt on one of our videos, somebody is Andrew has an Opeth shirt on. Like you've earned a lifelong customer. So you just need to keep wearing various metal bands, and we'll be set as far as a customer base.
Right. Yeah. Well, I can definitely empathize with that, because I feel like I live on this island of music where I like a lot of different music, but I really enjoy metal, and I feel like it's hard to find people in my immediate sphere who also enjoy metal. Like, I'm like, check out this thing, it's so awesome, and I play, they're like, this is the worst thing I've ever heard. So I whenever I see someone out in public who's like wearing like a metal shirt, I almost always like say, yeah, nice, to them.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, there are other people like me out there. So it's really just to create solidarity with other metal fans out there in the wilderness.
That's awesome. You should ask them to be friends.
Well, we should hang out, meet at a show or something.
Do you want to hang out?
No, man, I'm still listening to music.
Yeah.
Don't get pushy.
I'm into metal for a reason. Yeah.
Right.
Well, we've got an awesome show. It's a little bit different. Get excited, everybody, because we've got a new segment, a new series. We're going to be talking about our top 5 most influential games. What does that mean? I don't know. I think we've maybe all interpreted it a little differently. I'm excited to talk about mine, and today we're going to talk about all of our number 5s, and that's going to be later in the show. And we're also going to be talking what's going on at Earthborne Games, some new exciting things to share with you. But first, we've got a bunch of awesome listener questions, and I want to thank you all for sending in your questions. We've been answering every single one so far, except for that one that, you guys know what I'm talking about. Anyway, our first question comes from Kikia on YouTube. It says, just a quick cue. Why don't the pewter places reuse their own pewter? I thought that was common practice for metalworking. Just surprised you are able to source it and use it when the producers aren't.
Yeah, so I thought this was a really good question that I did not know the answer to. So this is in reference to our pewter miniatures, which are made out of reclaimed pewter. So I reached out to our manufacturer and asked, and he told me this. He said, the short answer is they do, but those places work on creating large dishes. So often the pewter produced is provided in sheets or preformed. The offcuts are very small, so it couldn't be used for anything unless you melt them back down and re-roll them, for example. And he says to think of it similarly to wood sculptors. They use wood, but the wood that is offcut might not be any good for them, and they might pass that on to someone else, perhaps who makes pencils or uses smaller pieces of wood for sculpting or as firewood. Unless you are set up for the reuse of materials back to their raw form and then resupply in exactly the form you need, it's not worth your while collecting it up in any meaningful manner. So I thought that was interesting. So so it sounds like, if you're set up for it, then yes, of course. But if you're, in a more of a, we're just going to bang out these plates or dishes or whatever, and all the offcuts just get kind of like heaped into a pile, and it's just not worth the time to do that, then then we get the benefit. So that's pretty cool. So that is the answer straight from the horse's mouth.
I suppose a lot of places.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, I suppose a lot of places like that never really set themselves up with that sort of mindset or that thinking ahead to reuse these materials in the first place. So that's interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it's just not part of their process. It sounds like. But where other places it might be.
Great question, Kikia.
Yes, excellent question.
And Andrew went the extra mile by asking another person for you. And I thought it'd be amazing if Lewis would have also included an answer from someone else that he asked. just super meta. I got jokes. Okay, we got another question from Matt on YouTube. YouTube, apparently a great place to ask us questions. Just comment in the video version of this podcast. And Matt says, Hello, a few questions on how you're handling some design elements. Number 1. In open world PC games, running back and forth through the same area and facing the same challenges can become rather monotonous. How are you mitigating this potential issue in Earthborne Rangers?
Yeah, I think this is a good question, and this kind of relates to some of what we were talking about last episode with the open world and like what travel and fast travel looks like in it. We have run into this a little bit in some of our playtesting, but it hasn't been a huge issue for several reasons. First of all, we've designed kind of the main storyline of the game to progress you through the valley kind of sequentially. It kind of starts near the top of the valley and then progresses down towards the south. So the story is kind of bringing you to new areas as you go and progressing you kind of very logically through the space. So ideally, the story is not designed in a way that's going to require a bunch of backtracking over and over the areas you've gone. Ideally, we have run into a few cases. Andrew was actually just mapping his playthrough of the valley, and we found a couple hot spots. I think you ran through Branch like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah,
right?
I made the run between Branch and the High Basin like maybe 5 times. But that was my fault. Like I did that myself. That wasn't the game.
Well, it was a little bit my fault. I had 2 story missions converging on the same place, but that's why we test and we're kind of working that out. So ideally, the flow of the game isn't going to require a lot of backtracking, unless you're going back to kind of complete that one last thing that you didn't get done. Second, we have kind of this tool that emerges throughout the game. There's a path type in the game, the rivers, that you're not allowed to use at the start of the game. You'll kind of see them. They look a little bit different than our other paths. They're kind of drawn like rivers, and you're explicitly not allowed to use them. And then throughout play of the game, these will become accessible to you. And this really opens up the map where when you get access to being able to use these rivers, suddenly a trek that on foot was pretty difficult and required going around the long way, you can now take a river and take a lot more of a direct route. And so that really kind of shrinks the map for players who have progressed to that certain point when that backtracking might become a little bit more difficult. And finally, we talked a little bit last podcast about some of the kind of fast travel, quote unquote, tools that we have in the game. Some of these unlock as you kind of progress through the game. There are rewards that help you travel faster, and there are to avoid spoilers, there are a couple things where if you complete them, they give you some extra utilities to help you get around the valley. And these kind of all combine along with your knowledge of the pool and where tools like the Swift we mentioned last time, the airship, where you and how you can find it. These tools all kind of come together to make traversing the valley easier and easier as you go on. So these 3 different things combined have meant that we haven't seen a huge issue with that feeling of monotony in backtracking.
Yeah, I think I would add to that also that you, at least, the way that I've been playing the game where I've just been jumping from location to location, I don't really, in lots of cases, I haven't really gone very deep into the path deck to begin with. So it also depends on how you play. Like if you go to each location and exhaust that path deck in every single location every time you go, then it might feel a little bit monotonous if you're using the same terrain type every time. But you have a lot of control over that too, where you can there's enough variety in the way that the paths are constructed that you can encounter different beings in different terrain types. You shuffle in different cards from the valley set. There's all of the landmarks for each pivotal location. There's a lot of stuff that can mix that up, and depending on how many turns, how many rounds you spend at an individual location, that'll determine like how deep into that deck you go. So you have a lot of control over that.
Awesome. And then Matt has the second part to this question, which is, I recall hearing that each campaign will be a fixed number of days. If I'm the type of player that likes exploring and not following the primary storyline, how will I know if I'm running out of time? For instance, what happens if the primary story takes a minimum of 10 days to complete, but I only have 8 days left in my campaign?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So we do have a day track on our campaign sheet. However, you are not strictly limited to the number of days on our day track. You could arguably keep playing in the valley forever. So we don't have necessarily a strict the valley, your time in the valley is over timer. It's like a lot of open worlds, it's kind of infinite. That being said, there are timers in the game. However, we've kind of compartmentalized them to each individual part of the story. So as parts of the story need to be timed, they are timed individually. And so this means that you're going to know for the individual task that you have right now, roughly how much time you have, how many days you have to complete that task. And we've tried to kind of pace this such that I think our monthly update to Kickstarter backers a couple months ago, I talked a bit about this challenge of pacing. We've kind of tried to pace it where there's certain urgent events in the story that'll happen, and these will have a pretty tight timer where you'll get shown how many days you have to complete this task, and it's kind of a rush and it's difficult. And then you're going to have some more open times where you'll have that kind of chance to explore and just kind of set your own objectives inside the open world. And so these kind of timers go back and forth to hopefully create a pacing that feels pretty good for the story. And ideally, you'll kind of know and be able to see how much time you have for any given part of the story that's currently going on. There is ultimately, like, if you waited till the maximum timer on every single part of the story, there is a total number of days in which the story will run its course. You could go off and do nothing, and the story will run its course without you while you explore the corners of the valley, leaving it to its devices. So there is an ultimate timer, but you will be notified along the way as each of those stages progresses. So I think we're achieving that kind of awareness of the timer, but it's definitely been a challenge since we don't have like an automated system like a video game might that's going to be notifying you in your face. So our kind of campaign tracking systems need to do this in these kind of stages.
Awesome. We've got another question. We've got a lot of questions today. This one's from Kieran, and it was sent via email. And Kieran asks, originally I wanted to ask whether, off the back of Evan's story, cheese and crackers might end up in some card art for Earthborne Rangers.
It won't. Not if I have anything to say about it. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, I love that question. That's my first time reading it, and I
didn't know that was a question.
Maybe can you do an Easter egg in a card game? I don't know. You peel a card apart.
Yeah. I can think of some opportunities for that to happen.
How about on that table that there's a nice real centerpiece of an art. I don't know what I'm saying.
Oh, that was like a thank you piece. I don't know if that'll that won't really make it into the game itself. That was more of maybe the art book. I don't know.
Yeah, it'll probably be in the art book, I think. That's what I was thinking where that piece would go.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the cheese and crackers. Yeah, it'll probably be in the art book. Yeah, for sure.
Well, are there cheese and crackers on that table?
I know it's like fish.
Yeah,
it's fish and salad.
With some red onions. I remember some circle. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm trying to think. That one was a blur because I felt like I needed to get it done relatively quickly.
Yeah, it was hey Evan, can you make this in the next couple days? Wow, I should do this.
Yeah, I think we put did we put the fish on it because of Team Covenant's stream?
No, it was very inspired by Monster Hunter World and the meals you can eat in that game.
Oh yeah.
The speed at which I rendered Lone Tree Station in the background was just, I didn't give it enough thought. But it was kind of fun to just throw it out there and create it. It felt irresponsible because Lone Tree is such a cool place, and I just quickly made it.
I love it. I think it's a beautiful piece of art.
Oh, thanks.
So Kieran goes on to say, but then I wondered whether cheese and crackers would persist as a foodstuff in the proposed world of ER. In the future, is everyone vegan? Would non-dairy substitutes have been developed for those wanting a quick lunch snack standing over the counter? Wow, I love all the references here. Or has sustainable farming of animal byproducts been established as part of humanity's ecological progress? Great question.
Yeah, it was a pretty great question. So we covered a little bit in the lore and then in the game, but I feel like this type of question is best answered in a full on like role playing product. So maybe sometime down the road we'll, I think, get more into what food looks like in the valley, because eating food is one of my favorite things to do in role playing games. So I think it's more the latter. So I say that to me, like to say that to me is this: we haven't fully answered this question, but we do talk about it a fair amount in the lore. So it's more the latter, where it's there's a sustainable balance. Primarily we've established that the people in the valley largely forage for food, so they don't do a lot of like really traditional like modern agriculture like we would think of it today. It's not like big fields or like massive gardens or anything feeding thousands and thousands of people. It's more like small tended gardens and then going out into the wilderness or into your surroundings and gathering like the fruits and nuts and stuff that are around you, and you eat those things. So there's a lot of like grains and berries and nuts and stuff like that. You don't find a lot of those on cards. But then there's also a lot of fish. So the people, especially in White Sky, are fisher folk, and they supply a lot of food to the valley with their fishing. So there's also traditional hunters as well. I've thought about the history of the people who moved to the valley, and that before settling, they were more of an itinerant culture and followed herds and hunted. And since they've moved to the valley, a lot of people have kind of gone away from hunting and focused more on fishing and then this foraging. But I imagine that there's still a portion of the population that still feels strongly tied to that process of hunting, that hunting culture, and go out and hunt an artilope here or there, but do it in a way that's is humane and thoughtful and non-destructive. So that's basically where we're sitting right now.
So non-dairy substitutes is probably not. It sounds like there's no processed food.
Yeah, no, I think you'd just have dairy. Like, I don't know if you'd like milk a iron wool sheep. We haven't really established any cattle in the setting. We have deer and artilope, which are kind of deer-like, a little bit smaller. And we have sheep. So yeah, I don't really know where they'd get their milk, but I imagined, cheese is just too good. I can't imagine people in the future not wanting cheese.
Or bread? Do they make bread?
Yeah, I think they'd make bread. Yeah, absolutely. Make some flour out of those nuts they gather.
Have you looked at any cultures from real life as inspiration, or just kind of a hodgepodge of things you've learned?
No, it's just mostly like how I pretty much most of the setting is like trying to take how I like my personal ideal way to live and then project that into the future. So yeah, we're really looking at, we're pulling mostly from American culture and, what we could do to, mostly in response to a lot of the things that we do poorly.
I believe the working title of the game was Andrew's World. Is that right?
Kind of, yeah, in some ways. In a lot
Andrew's
of ways.
Fantastic Utopia.
Yeah, that's the subtitle.
That got chopped a while back. And we've got one last question from Taylor. That was a great question, by the way, from
It was.
Kieran.
Thank you.
Taylor asks, what's your individual approach to deck building when playing a card game? Deck building is something that I have always struggled with. It's easy to make a deck with cards that look cool, but making sure they synergize is another story.
Well, I think that's actually one of the really cool things about to toot our own horn here, I think that's one of the cool things about the deck building in Earthborne Rangers is because this game is kind of straddling both the kind of worlds of a role-playing game and a card game. I've found that different people approach the deck building in very different ways. So to start off, I'm a very kind of analytical person. So when I build a deck, I usually, in any card game, I kind of look for combos or tricks that I want to pull off. A couple cards that synergize really well together, and then I kind of get those in place, and then kind of flesh out the rest of the deck based on what I'm enabling those, right? And so when I build like an Earthborne Rangers deck, I go through and kind of look at the, what is the thing I want to be doing when I play mechanically. Like I want to be dodging all these animals quickly and traversing my location immediately, or I want to create my little engine of gear that's going to exhaust everything on the board and keep the board nice and clean. And then I kind of build the rest of my deck around those mechanical themes. What aspects do I need to enable that? But Andrew, I think you usually take a very different approach than I do, right?
Well, I'm trying to think of, as you were talking, I was trying to think of like how I've actually approached it. I think I mostly just approach it through theme, and not really worry too much about the mechanics and just see what happens when I get in there. And I think, yeah, you're right. Like not most competitive. Well, I don't know. Most card games, it's really hard to do that. And I think it's often hard to do that, like in miniatures games too, to do, like a functional army list or a functional deck that's like purely based on theme. But I think in Earthborne Rangers, it does work to do that. So that's usually what I do is like, ooh, this looks pretty cool. Oh, this looks cool. But I think this Ranger I've been playing, I just tried, I went more of like a min-max approach where I just tried to maximize all my spirit energy and did everything around spirit for connection, because I wanted to do try to do a completely pacifist playthrough. And the best way to do that is by, just pouring on all the spirit energy and as much as you possibly can and all the cards that support that. And so that's worked pretty well. But I think in general, I'm also terrible at deck building, which which is nice that this game is it's pretty easy. Like you can go through deck building in a very, very short period of time, and not sweat it too much. Like you can maximize your choices and make, quote unquote, better choices than others. But if you don't make the best choice, that's okay, because there's lots of opportunities to augment your deck as you play, and to just see what works. Yeah, but overall, I don't know if I even have an approach to deck building as far as, just like card games in general. It's mostly like, yeah, I like that cool thing looks cool. Like you saying, like pick cards that look cool. That's usually how I go too. And I don't do very well, but I have fun. So
I also have to give a shout out to Brooks, who's one of the designers, who's been designing a lot of the path cards in the game. And they, in several of our play tests, rolled a entirely random deck. So they they randomly chose which background and specialty they want, and then randomly chose cards from within those pools to end up with their deck. And then they just kind of play and see what happens. Of course, some of the cards in their deck are maybe not the most optimal choices, but they just kind of play around it and play around what the game gives them. So I thought that was a very interesting approach.
That's fun.
And we got one more question from Taylor. Have you all played the standalone Gwent game from CD Projekt Red? If so, what are your thoughts on it? I've played a lot of it using pre-made decks, and it's a lot of fun. It doesn't seem to be that popular, though, and I'm not sure why. I've played a little bit of it, but I have no opinions about it.
None.
Anyone else play it?
No, you played it, but no opinions?
It's hard for me. I don't know.
Is it much different than the Gwent in Witcher 3? I have not played the standalone Gwent. I only played Gwent in the context of the Witcher 3.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say the same.
Talk about it.
I was going to say the same thing. I played Gwent a bunch in Witcher 3. I got really into like Geralt's deck inside the game and playing all the different NPCs, but I actually haven't played much of the standalone one. My understanding is it's pretty similar, maybe just a little more like polished and filled out than its in RPG counterpart.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I liked it. I didn't like it enough to spend all of my Witcher time playing, because you can just spend hours and hours and hours playing Gwent in that game. And I'd rather go around and fight guys with swords. But I think I played a couple hours of Gwent. It was fine. That was pretty fun.
I've heard pretty good things about the standalone version from friends. So I unfortunately can't really speak to if the design of it played anything into maybe it's being not as popular. But I will say that I feel like it kind of had a bit of poor timing on its release.
That's what I was going to say.
It kind of came out a bit after the digital card game bubble of like Slay the Spire and Hearthstone and these other kind of products that they'd kind of run their course, and Gwent kind of snuck in at the end, right? And it definitely found its audience to a degree, but it didn't get to ride that high at all. And so I think some of it comes in just release timing, at least from where I'm sitting.
Mm-hmm. There was a card game within one of the Shovel Knight. Do you guys ever play Shovel Knight?
Yeah.
The King of Cards. I think it was their final, extra game that they gave to everybody for free that kickstarted or that bought the game. But there's a game in there. I forget what it's called now. Joustus. I love that game. It's just a simple little card game. The cards are so cool. I really want them to make an app. Yeah, it's good. I love that game.
Dawned on me the wordplay there.
I played the original Shovel Knight, but I never played any of the DLCs, and I didn't know they had a card game.
Oh, I love the game. I love the final one they did, King of Cards. The character is so fun to play. Have you guys ever played the Wario games?
Like WarioWare?
Not WarioWare, but Wario Land.
Oh yeah,
where you
the
actually
old
play
platformers.
Yeah, the platformers.
Yeah,
how Wario can charge and break stuff. It's all that, and it's super fun.
That's cool.
Give it a try.
Well, that makes me wonder, will we ever have like an in-world game that Rangers play while they're taking a break on the side of the trail?
I have a note in the lore documents where Sam had this offhanded comment that he made about games, and I was like, wonder what kind of games they play in the Valley, and it's still there as a comment in the Google Doc.
Well, that had actually got me thinking, and I was kind of inspired by the idea of like 52 card decks and other game components that are kind of modular to different systems, right? Like even like checkerboards to a degree too, where you can play several different games on a checkerboard. And I was kind of fiddling around with these like sets of like stones or tiles with different suits on them that people would keep in these little bags as they traveled around the Valley. But that idea hasn't really gone anywhere. It was just kind of my musings in my notebook while working on the game.
That sounds cool.
Well, thanks everybody for all the questions. And right now we're going to move on to work stories. And we're going to start by talking to the orange shirt guy. Sorry, I don't know. Evan.
I don't have much that's really interesting to report on the podcast. I can talk about pieces that have recently come in as complete or close to complete, which is exciting for me. But I don't really have anything to share like visually.
What's your favorite piece of art that came in the last 2 weeks?
I'm
going to make you pick favorites of all your freelancers right here and right now.
Right, I know. Hope you're not listening.
It was probably one of Wayne's moment pieces, because Wayne is now currently working on moment art for the Shaper deck, which is really cool because I haven't play tested the game as much as you guys have, but it seems like the Shaper moments they're a special thing of their own that are set apart from other moments that other decks have access to.
Yeah, the Shaper's manifestations are these like manifestations of their will that are channeled through these conduits they hold, and these can like alter reality in ways that might seem fantastical to kind of modern day. So they're basically our equivalent of magic spells in the game.
Yeah, and it's cool because he's developing the look of how that might appear in the game, which is exciting because we've talked about it a lot, about shapers and their abilities, but that we haven't really visually seen what that looks like just yet, I guess. So
yeah, there's like a level of abstraction to it where there's a lot of just cool things. I'm moving my hands. There's a lot of like just kind of cool things that happening and like swirling around. It's just fun design work.
Well, that's kind of how we approached the entire that section of cards, ranger cards. The moments they're fun to deal with because we're approaching them in a more ephemeral way or fleeting way. I'm almost treating the art briefs as if they're memories that the rangers possess that are adjacent to what's they're currently faced with, which I think is a cool take for card art because it's so easy to just have a literal representation of something. But this direction we're going is different, and I think it allows people to use their imagination a little bit more. So,
that's super cool.
Yeah. But other art that's coming that's cool is the Green Guardian art came in, and the Megadam Ruins and the Fractured Wall. That needs just a little bit of edit to it, but all three of those pieces are really cool. And I'm expecting to see Headwater Station and Tumbledown next week. So
nice.
That's really exciting. We're starting to close in on like the more meaningful locations. They're not meaningful, but what do you call them, Andrew?
The pivotal ones.
Pivotal. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, they're more. We've spent a lot of time with a lot of like natural environments that have like little ruins here or there, but they could more or less be something you could see today. But now we're really starting to get into like the real setting defining locations, and it's pretty fun.
Yeah,
so that's see that come together.
What percentage would you say? Like, where is the art? How far are you? How close are we to it being done?
There, the art has 85% of the art has been assigned and is coming in, and the remaining maybe 10 to 15 is yet to be assigned, but is quickly being snatched up by artists as they have availability. So it's coming along.
Yeah, we have a bunch of stuff. The pile of art that is done has grown considerably, but we have, I think, just as much, if not more than that, kind of in middle stages right now. So the next couple of months is going to be pretty crazy with art coming in.
It kind of comes down to how the artists want to work too. It's as I've like dipped my toes into this art direction role, it's been interesting to learn how I interact with artists changes depending on the artist and what their work style is. So one artist, he wants to have all 30 of his pieces at the same level of completion. So once he's done with all those, that's just 30 pieces that are like, I can knock off the list. Other artists are working in batches. Yeah.
How does it feel to be? Are you kind of doing art direction more than creating art yourself these days?
Yeah, it's totally shifted. What I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, but I used to be able to finish my piece of art that I'm working on for the game in 1 to 3 days, and I could invest all my time and energy in it. And now I finish one piece of art in like a week because all my duties are like revolving around art direction and getting feedback as quickly as possible and making sure it's like meaningful feedback and just want to be like a helpful, not a coach, but a kind of like a base runner, in baseball, that we're just doing this,
Right.
Not a base runner. What are they called?
Like a base coach.
Base coach. That's what I'm thinking of. Thank you. I didn't play a lot of sports growing up.
Neither did anybody listen to this podcast.
That's not true.
Oh, that's probably not true.
That's not true at all. I think also, like, having, I've spent a lot of time in the art direction world, and I can say, like, the level of attention to detail you put into every step of the process, Evan, is like, it's at a completely different level, I think, from what is, I think, expected from artists. Just like we've talked about before, like the art briefs are kind of like these little stories, but then they're just filled with like lots of great references, and providing references is something that most art directors do. But I think there's a lot of pieces that you will just lay out completely and do like an awesome sketch, and then like, here you go, and give it to the artist.
Oh yeah,
very little to do.
Thank you.
I can vouch for that for sure. Working with you.
Yeah, so it really, you spend a lot of time with it, but it saves so much time in the back and forth, because you have a very, very clear idea of the composition and the detail that we want.
And you work so quickly
from the beginning. Yeah.
You just quit. I send you something and you just mark it up and you're like, do it like this. Like an hour later, it feels like you're natural.
I've learned that I have to have a lot of template files sitting around that I can quickly access, so I'm not starting from square one every single time, which is helpful. But also, I think the reason why I've been putting so much detail and attention into these art briefs is because this world is so completely new. We're still like writing the pages of it as we work. It's just the world is kind of expanding just ahead of us all the time. So it just forces me to stay on my toes and be available to brainstorm and help out.
Yeah.
So. Sweet.
Yep.
Let's talk about Fisher's world.
Yeah. So my world is, last week I got to dust the cobwebs off of my computer science knowledge and touch up I think we've talked a bit about this before, but all of our cards are generated through a script. So we actually do a lot of our work in Google Sheets and then export those to our various card InDesign files into actual layout. This kind of pipeline allows us to make large edits and also do translation easier, where our partners who are translating the game can translate the sheets and then just export versions of their cards. So this pipeline saves us a lot of time in a lot of ways, but it requires this script to be able to translate these spreadsheets into our cards. And so we kind of updated our card templates, Evan did, and Evan wrote our first version of these data merge scripts, and I kind of took them over and updated them to our new card templates so that we could kind of get our cards into the state we want them for the next stage, which is what Andrew and I have jumped into this week, which we call Card Council. This is a practice that we also did back at Fantasy Flight Games, and where we get everybody who's been working on card text into a room together, or in this case into a virtual room together, and we go line by line through every single card in the game. And this exercise serves a few different purposes, but one of the primary ones is for templating and consistency. Our game has hundreds of cards in it, and developed by they might be designed by the Sadlers, by Brooks, by myself, by Andrew. Sam's doing writing, Evan's laying out these cards. Like, there's so many different contributors, and this game has changed so much as we're testing and fixing and developing and adding. And so there's a lot of moving parts. And as part of that, it can be kind of hard to keep a really, really rigid, consistent style to all these different asymmetrical and incomparable abilities. And so the language sometimes isn't as consistent during all of these iterations. And so what Card Council allows us to do is take a very detailed look at every single card in the game and kind of compare it against our style guide and update our style guide and make decisions about our style guide so that we know kind of all of our cards are templated consistently, adhere to a style guide, and kind of get that bigger consistency picture now that we're done, now that we're most of the way done with all of the constant iterations and changes. It can be a bit of a slog reading through every single card to that level of detail. Like, how many, what was our pace yesterday, Andrew?
We met for about 5 hours, and we got through, I think, 27 cards, 28 cards.
All right.
Wow.
So like, yeah, a card every like 10-ish minutes.
Yeah.
And as you can imagine, that's our average. So some cards go pretty fast. Other cards, lead to a in-depth discussion about, like tenses or sentence structure or how we want to do clauses in this type of rule. So ideally, it will speed up as we kind of make all these templating decisions, but it's a very kind of involved process, and that's what we're diving in through right now.
Cool. Does that wrap up your stories for the week?
I think so. I mean, that's what Andrew and I are going to be doing right after this podcast. In fact.
Right after this.
It sounds fun. I would love to do something like that someday.
Oh yeah,
Just
I love Card Council. It's fun to just bicker about minutia of rules wordings and like
it sounds great.
Yeah.
That's funny because back when we all were at Fantasy Flight, I would see Card Council happening through the windows into the corner office, and I would just like, thank God I'm not in there. I was poring over huge print-offs of cards that all look the same to me without art. And that just doesn't seem super intriguing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it takes all kinds.
Well, as you can imagine, by the end of like day 3, everybody in that room would get a little punchy, and like you kind of. You've spent so much time staring at card text. Everybody in that room gets a little loopy, and it gets a little silly by the end. But and so it can be. It's definitely hard, and it's not everybody's favorite step. But I don't know. It just hits something in my brain that I really enjoy the process.
Yeah. And Andrew, that's what you've been doing as well?
Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to talk about too. Yeah, let's. I've been doing this. The last week and a half has been just a complete blur to me. Like last week, I feel like it's one of those weeks where, if you guys can't relate to this, then maybe I should go get like an MRI or something. But like, where you just come out of it, you're like, what did I even do? Like, I don't
that's me like every week.
Yeah, I get that feeling. Definitely.
So I know I worked last week, but man, I tell you what, it is a complete blur. But been doing more playtesting. I'm very, very close to like Fisher mentioned. I did a little map that once my campaign is done, I'll make sure to share that with backers. Did this little map of my journey through the valley. So just like you looked at my notes and then drew all these lines over all the paths and stuff, and that was really fun. I also started working on a layout for the art and lore book because we're going to be commissioning, writing, and editing for that soon. So we needed a word count for that. So in order to get the word count, I needed to do like a really rough layout. So I've been kind of noodling on that at night. So I like sports. So the NBA playoffs started, and I have an ability to watch that this year. So usually I don't because it's all on cable, but I have a YouTube TV subscription that I also got to watch the NFL playoffs that I just haven't gotten rid of. So now that that's on, there's basketball on like every night, which I remember from the last time I had the ability to watch basketball. I just kind of got sucked into watching basketball every single night. So I'm just kind of sitting there with the game on and then noodling around on the layout. So that's been really fun just to do some layout, some good old classical book graphic design. It's very relaxing. That's been fun. But yeah, started Card Council with Fisher yesterday, and it's pretty fun. It's I think I have an English degree, so I enjoy reading, writing. I enjoy sentence structure and grammar and learning the definitions of words and determining what prepositions to use. And I love looking that stuff up. So it's like we're looking up, but what's should we use as if or as though? It's like, is this from or by? This real basic language things that you colloquially use those things interchangeably, but want to make the grammatically correct choice.
Well, I was just thinking about that kind of thing the other day because I never know what to say in the beginning when I say I'm joined by?
Yeah.
Or I'm joined with? Joined by.
Yep.
Joined by. Okay.
Yeah.
Continue.
You got it.
Well,
I got it.
You can say I'm here with. You could say
I'm here
that.
with. Yeah. Right. Joined by.
Well, I think, Andrew, that your English degree it's really helpful for one, obviously, but like it's really interesting because like one of the dichotomies that we run into a lot in these kind of templating passes is, we're looking for ways to consistently say effects the same every single time, like almost like a computer program,
right?
So that players have that consistency and they know, like, if something is different, it is different for a reason. The problem is English is not a computer language. And so there are a lot of times where, we come up with a template that works 99% of the time, but then we hit that 1% card that if you use that templating is just grammatically incorrect, right?
It just sounds totally wrong.
And so there's this dissonance between like correct English, but also very structured technical templating. And I mean, we're basically describing like the whole job of technical writing and technical editing.
Right.
And we're trying to bash our heads together to basically create that and make sure that we get templating that is both like kind of as programmatic as possible, but also proper English.
Yeah. Well, being like reading this game out loud, like we'll get into that more when we start with the Ranger cards. We'll get into it more when we get to the path cards. But, part of what I really wanted to try to accomplish with the language in this game is something that it reads well. When you read it, it kind of just flows, has a nice rhythm to it. And that can also be a challenge, I think, when trying to do this kind of very programmatic. Because it can't. Because if you do like break it down into its like component parts, it can sound a little robotic. And
absolutely.
So like we made a decision yesterday that I feel like we need to talk. I want to like make sure we're all right with again today, because it sounded better, but it's not actually following the templating, but it definitely sounds better.
I think I know.
Yeah. You know the ones I mean.
But they sound so much better.
They do. Yeah. So we were evoking another former coworker's name, Adam Baker, who was our editor at FFG for many, many years, who would, I don't think, be happy with our choice.
No, yeah, he probably wouldn't.
I appreciate your attention to this detail and the hours you're pouring into this, because if there's a typo in a game, if there's just a weird sentence, if it feels like it's just bad writing, it ruins an entire game for me.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like the developers were just kind of, that's the last thought was, that's just the words. That doesn't matter much, but it ruins games for me. I stopped playing. Like, that typo. How did you let that slip?
Yeah. Well, we'll get a copy editor in here once we're all done with this to give it a once over.
Heck yeah. That's the way
it's
got to be done. Well, we finally reached the big moment, you guys.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to count down our 5 most influential games. And the way we're going to do it is just today we're going to be talking about our number 5s. And then next episode we'll do number 4s. And I hope that's the most entertaining way possible. And the way, I think maybe the way we've interpreted this assignment of picking our top 5 most influential games, maybe we've interpreted it differently. So I'm interested to see how you guys have decided this thing. And starting us off is me. I mean, I've made a couple little game jam games, and I'm an artist, and I'm just a creative person, and I love games. And so for me, I think I chose the 5 games that had an impact on me at different parts in my gaming life. I was trying to think of, tabletop games and some sports. I like sports. You're not the only one, Andrew.
Oh, good.
Because sports are. some of them are more game-like than,
Sports and games.
Yeah, I flirted with putting football on this list.
Oh, really?
But I didn't.
American
I didn't feel
football?
like, yeah, American football. Yeah, not footy.
Yeah.
Because it has been pretty influential in my life, but it didn't really feel like it belonged
Right.
on the.
And
It's a game, but it's a sport. I don't know.
sport.
And I will say, I don't hate sports. I just haven't played a lot of them, or I did, but not organized sports. So yeah,
I like the clarification there.
yeah.
I'm sorry if I alienated any of our listeners. You can like sports and nerd stuff.
Yeah,
It's cool.
you can. It's true. You're totally allowed.
So anyway, for me, number 5, I got this game when I was probably 8 years old, 10 years old. I don't know. My dad, I don't think I even asked for it, but my dad bought the Nintendo Entertainment System for my uncle. That I still don't understand why he had a Nintendo. This like 50-year-old guy, single guy. He's not that kind of guy. Anyway, I came home from school one day. I think it was my birthday, and there was the Nintendo set up, and he weirdly had these wireless controllers as well, which I can't believe they existed back then, but I think they were just using like infrared remote control kind of technology.
Is this a real memory?
Yeah. I also can't believe that the Sega Channel existed when it did.
Oh,
do you,
yeah.
Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
No. There was a
I mean,
Sega,
I don't.
there was a Sega
like,
channel, like on
In
cable.
the mid 90s, you could, through your cable provider, you could get this little box that plugged into your Sega, and it had you plugged your cable into that, and every month there'd be, I don't know, 30 new games on there you can just play.
Wow.
I think
It's
they downloaded-
revolutionary.
Yeah, seriously, they were like way too far. They were about 20 years too early.
I know. It's amazing that existed, streaming games, but I think they were downloaded onto that little box that you plugged in.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, the games that my uncle had were one of them was Top Gun, and the other was Super Mario Brothers. And so my number 5 game is Top Gun.
Nice.
Cool.
That game, no, that game sucks. Top Gun was incredibly hard. I still don't think I'd know what to do. I love that in those early Nintendo games, you just didn't know what to do.
Uh-huh.
Like you couldn't get past the first level, but you would just play it over and over again anyway. Yeah. You just were happy to be controlling something on the TV screen.
that was like Ghosts and Goblins. Trying to play that. Like, God, that game is so hard.
It's so hard.
You just get past the first level, you're like, yes, and then you die right away. Like,
I'll do that again tomorrow.
Yeah.
No, Super Mario Brothers. Whenever I think about my favorite games, that game, I just remember the pure joy of that was my first time ever controlling a video game. And if you guys can remember that first time where you're holding the controller in your hand and you're making something happen on the screen, so thrilling. Didn't even matter what it was, but Super Mario Brothers, just like the first level, the way Mario feels, the momentum, the way it, everybody talks about how that game does such a good job of teaching you without actually tutorializing. Is brilliant. It's brilliant. It's still brilliant. I played it the other day, and there's just like new things just keep happening as you go. Like, so if it's your first time playing a platformer, you get to the question mark block and you're got to figure that out. I remember the feeling there, like, oh, I can jump up into something and something happens. It's just wild that was, nowadays looking back, how could that be exciting? But first time, you jump on the Koopa. Those are the turtles, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you learn that the shell goes flying, and if it bounces back, it can kill you. Just all these little details right there in the first level. Coming up to a pit, and I remember jumping over that pit felt like a big challenge.
Yeah.
Oh no, if I go down, I have to start over. If I fall in here, you get the fire flower right away. Then you learn that you can shoot things with this weird bouncy fireball. It's just loaded with fun right off the bat, and then you learn. Then later on, as I've played the game, a bunch, then you start holding run all the time and you can just zip through the levels, and the music is so good. I mean, to this day, if I start playing that, I'll just, get to the end and beat it in, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes if you use all the warp zones. And it's just still so fun. It just feels like muscle memory now. And that's my number 5.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's a solid choice.
Yeah, like I remember playing it for the first. I played it for the first time at Joe's house.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because
Nice.
I never. It took me a long time to get a Nintendo. I had a Sega Master System, just to be different, but it didn't have very many games on it.
Yeah.
But like for me, I'm a little bit older, so I'd played a lot of Atari and in television, and just like arcade games, and then trying to play the Atari version of that arcade game that you liked, like it was always like this horrible, crappy, impossible to control, like everything's flickering because I can only have so many objects on the screen at the same time. And then playing Super Mario Brothers, it was like revelatory. Just all the colors and like you said, the music, that's just the gameplay, everything. That's a really fantastic. It's fantastic. It is still good. I don't think I've played the original version in a really long time. I played the Super Mario All-Stars version.
Oh,
more.
Does it feel different?
Yeah.
I've never played it.
It's a little different.
Yeah.
It feels a little different.
Yeah, they updated it to like the 32-bit for the
I think it was Super Nintendo, wasn't it?
Super Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that game's crazy feeling. The momentum on Mario is it takes a while to get back into the groove with that one. You're gonna die instantly.
I'm not very good at I'm good through like World 4, and then after that I start to have trouble. I can never finish. Like I'm not good enough to like just get through World 8, or I can get through 7, but then I get to 8. I'm like, ugh. Yeah. I got to do the multiple lives thing with the turtle shell to do it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the little secrets like that is another great thing about
Speaking
it.
Of secrets, has anyone ever gotten themselves to Minus World? The weird, screwed up, never meant to be played world.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
I may have tried that. Yeah, later in life.
You have to jump and pass Mario through like a block at a weird angle backwards, and he walks through the wall. And there's a pipe on the other side with -1 world or something above it.
Yeah. Well, that's another amazing thing about that era of gaming. There was no internet, but I just knew all these secrets somehow. I know I didn't subscribe to any magazines or anything, but
you didn't have Nintendo Power?
No, I never did that. But even Punch Out is another game I loved.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Those levels, I don't know how I knew how to beat those different characters throughout the game, but each one of them has such a specific pattern you have to know, and punch them in the gut and then punch them up here,
Yeah.
And Mario has a bunch of that too, the secret one-ups here and there, and this minus world and things. That's so cool that back then it was such a like communal real world thing too. Your friends would tell you the secret, and so exciting.
Schoolyard wisdom.
Right. Mortal Kombat fatalities and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The blood code.
Great time in history. So there's my number 5.
Awesome.
Let's do who wants to do it next? Fisher?
Yeah, sure. I can talk about my number 5.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I was actually trying to decide. I wrote my list of all 5, and I was trying to decide how to order them. I tried to kind of do order of importance, but it wasn't quite working. It was hard to do that value judgment. So I did. I'm kind of going through them chronologically.
So am I. I just want to add. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing too.
Okay,
Awesome.
Cool. So when I was young, obviously I played a lot of video games, on NES and stuff. But I also played a lot of board games. My dad had a ton of board games from the 70s that my brother and I would play in our basement. And I played all the classics, like Risk and Monopoly and stuff. And I was just getting into like Pokemon cards and stuff. And my friend's dad asked us if we wanted to play this boring-looking game about stocks with him. And this game was called Acquire. And so for those of you who don't know, Acquire is this part of this run done by 3M back in, I think they actually launched these also in the 70s. They're called bookshelf games. There's a bunch of kind of sports themes ones, and then a bunch of kind of abstract games, kind of like chess-like games, and then games about real-world topics like stocks and bonds and Acquire. He had this brightly colored plastic version from the 90s, but we played it and it just like clicked for us. Even though, we were into Pokemon and stuff, but like this game about stocks trading really clicked for us and we just loved playing it. My friend's dad would kick our ass at this game, but we kept playing. We did play some games without him just so we could actually had a chance to win sometimes. But and it really resonated with us. But eventually we moved on to other games, and I didn't think about it for a long time. And then I think it was like in college, I was kind of thinking like, oh, I had these really fond memories of this game I played as a kid, and so I picked it back up. And it's interesting, even though like it was kind of this moment in my childhood. I think Acquire ended up really informing a lot of like my taste and how I saw board game mechanics and what I found interesting. I think it takes a lot of like, a lot of people do the thought experiments like, how do you fix Monopoly? What if Monopoly was good? Some people argue that it's house rules that have ruined it. Some people argue that it's not meant to be a good game because it's an indictment of capitalism, whatever. I think Acquire is an example of how you fix Monopoly. I think Acquire is good Monopoly. It is, you have this board that's like a grid, and each turn, and then you have every space is labeled. I actually have an example. Every space is labeled with a letter and a number, and every space has a matching tile, and everybody gets a hand of tiles secretly, and each turn they can play a tile as they go around and then buy stocks, which we'll get to in a second. When two tiles are adjacent to each other, they form a company, and you put a little hotel on the company to represent that it's a company. And the more tiles it gets throughout the game, the bigger it gets. And then you buy stocks in these. And so it's all about this like kind of speculative buying and selling of stocks in these companies and what you think will grow, but you only have partial information of what's in your hand, and everybody kind of has control over what's growing and what's not. And you kind of get this emergent growth. And when two companies on the board touch, the bigger one absorbs the smaller one, and everybody who owned the smaller one gets a payout. And so it kind of models this like predatory capitalism and environment of limited resources and kind of this shared control. And so it kind of has elements of like an area control game, except none of the factions in the game you strictly control. You just all have stake in them. So it has these interesting elements of like emergence and hidden information and kind of limited resources and risk versus reward of, investing in the company you think is going to be biggest versus investing in small ones so that you can sell them off and get your money. And I think it really informed a lot of how I think about board game design. And I just love this game. I think the other fun thing about this game is I then, got this copy later in my life in college. So I think it's currently being published by Hasbro.
Yeah.
The current version is terrible. Not like mechanically, it's still the same great game, but it's all these like this kind of flimsy punchboard chits and stuff. And if you bump the board, they all go flying. The version in the 90s had all these plastic pieces that like snapped together. And so I always complain about this because I still love this game. And my amazing wife, Sam, a few years ago, after me talking about this, actually made me a custom version of Acquire. So I think I have the coolest version of Acquire in the world.
Cool.
It is in this like custom-made wooden box where the lid is the game board on the inside. It's all made out of laser cut wood. She even 3D modeled the each of the businesses has these stock cards. The stock cards are nice, so we kept them. But she modeled little buildings that match each of the buildings on the stock cards. and I painted them up, and then I got like play money, like money from movies. So you actually played with like real money and stuff. So you can see how much this game. I love this game, but it also really kind of influenced how I think about board game design quite a bit.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. It's interesting also that game exists. It appears to me, knowing nothing about the game, that it's played in an abstract space, but you're also introducing real world buildings into it. So it's like this confluence of real and imagined space or conceptual space or something.
Yeah, you kind of get a little bit of both. And that's one of the things I like about it is you get this visual representation of these companies because their value is equal to the number of tiles in kind of their mass. And so you can kind of see this visual story of the quote unquote marketplace in this game as it unfolds.
That's cool.
For people who are interested in seeing my custom copy of the game, I did do a blog post about it on my blog, which is andrewfishergames.com. So you can go check out. I have some nice photos of the custom version of it.
I've only played it once. My friend Paul Broman brought it over to my house many years ago. It's is his favorite game as well. Played it once. I won. And that's the only time I played. 100%.
You retired.
Yeah, 100, yeah.
Retired victorious.
I'm very good at winning the first time I play a thing. So if I never play it again. But I had a really good time with it, not only because I won, but that was a nice little cherry on top. But I thought it was cool. Yeah, I think like you described it really well. Like you'd think you pitch you on the premise, you're like, well, that sounds thoroughly boring.
Yeah.
But then when you play it, it is actually it's very engaging, not dull at all. And you feel like there's a level of control to it that feels really nice. You don't really feel like you're just kind of being whipped around by the game. I remember it feeling really, really good. Yeah, we should play it sometime. I'd probably lose to you, I would imagine.
Is it a 2-player game?
I think it goes up to like 5-ish people. Theoretically, it scales pretty easily to different player numbers. The first time Sam ever played it, she invested all of her money in a company that eventually grew very large. But like I said, you do need to invest in small companies that get kind of absorbed so you can get kind of payouts for your small. Otherwise, you don't have capital to keep playing with. And so she put all her money into a company that would eventually become huge, but just didn't have any money to play with during the game itself. So she hated the game. And then she spent all of this time making this beautiful custom version for me, even though she like absolutely did not want to play it.
Wow.
That's awesome.
She's come around.
Yeah.
Yeah, you found a good one there. Awesome. I love that. Let's keep the countdown going with Evan.
Yeah, so I'm sure you're all thinking that I'm going to say Final Fantasy 1 or 2, and then my whole top 5 will be Final Fantasy games, but it's not the case.
Not at all.
But you're right.
No. Yes. No, actually, the number 5 for me is Dig Dug.
Oh.
You guys remember that game, Dig Dug?
Oh, yeah. Of course. A lot of Dig Dug.
Yeah. So it's not my top 5 because I thought it was super fun or inspired me to play games like Dig Dug because it's pretty much the only game like that, and I don't know what is adjacent to it, but
Burger Time.
yeah. But the reason it's top 5 for me is because it was very formative in my childhood, and like you, Anders, I was around 8 when I was first exposed to this game, and my brother and I were at my parents' friend's house who. They had 2 older brothers, or 2 kids who were brothers. They were older than my brother and I. So I looked up them. I thought they were really cool. And one time they were playing Dig Dug on the Atari, and I was just amazed. They were like the coolest guys, and they were playing this amazing game. And they finally gave me a chance to play, and they handed the joystick to me, which is, I think the Atari joystick was just a stick and a red button on a square.
Yep.
Yeah.
Something. And that's all there was to it, but I had no idea how to play it. And it was super intimidating. And I pretty much refused to play because I was afraid of like embarrassing myself.
Aw.
And that's all there is to it. It's a very strong memory to me, like being in the spotlight and being super uncomfortable with it. And I think I still grapple with that to this day, like with this podcast and other things. Just speaking or performing in front of people is difficult, and that was my first experience with that.
Yeah.
Not playing Dig Dug. So
So it didn't like propel you into the spotlight, like you didn't become a attention-seeking individual after that. Just confirmed what you already believed about yourself.
yeah, either it forged that or it just revealed it. But it's similar to when I would in elementary school, I'd be drawing in a notebook and people would be leaning over my shoulder, like, "What are you drawing? What is that?" And I'd just cover it up and not want to show anyone.
Yeah, draw Animaniacs or
Yeah.
yeah. To draw.
Yeah, tell you to draw things. That's
I
always
hated that
that's
too.
always fun.
I know. What is that
Can you
supposed
draw
to be?
football? Yeah, I can draw football. Draw me football. I bet you I can draw better football than you.
Well, Evan, your art gets endless compliments from the game, and
It was good to hear.
your cheese and crackers bit last week may be the thing that resonated with our listeners the most of anything we've said on this podcast.
Right.
So you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Proverbially playing Dig Dug.
That offers a little insight into why I climbed up so much. When I mistakenly brought that up last episode.
Right. Was that your first game you ever played?
I think it might be.
Memory of playing a video game.
Oh
Yep.
wow!
Looks
cool.
terrible.
Dig Dug's amazing.
Yeah.
The Atari version looks terrible. but-
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I always wondered what the little blue and white guy looked like in reality, and that might be another thing that I really latched onto with older games like that. Is it allowed my imagination to construct what Dig Dug looked like?
Yeah. I'm looking at the box art right now, and I can see, that reminds me of when you did some box art for the fake 8-bit game that I did.
Yep. And I love that, not to drag this on, but I love the Eastern versus Western interpretations of games on box art.
Mm-hmm.
Like Japanese box art will have I can't speak for all of it, but a lot of it is like cute anime characters. And then the Western equivalent is like a big muscle bound dude with a huge gun.
That looks nothing like the actual
stuff.
game.
Yeah.
I know.
It's so
The
funny.
Mega Man.
I love it.
The Mega Man one stands out.
Yeah, Mega Man. Yep.
Yeah, you mentioning Dig Dug, Evan, brought back to me like a memory of drawing that very thing, like trying to imagine. I did that a lot with like arcade games. When I was a
me
kid,
too.
Like drawing in my sketchbook, like my version of what Dig Dug was, or trying to make them more realistic.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So fun.
Yeah, I did that a lot. And same like with like Legend of Zelda, I did that too.
Oh, yeah.
Did a lot of drawing of that type of thing.
Yeah. Well, that's a good choice, Evan. Which leaves us with the final number 5 of this episode. And Andrew, what is your number 5?
So yeah, I also decided to go chronological. Like I needed to give a shout out to Centipede as my like the first video game I remember, like the rollerball version, in the arcade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I used to love that thing. My parents would take me bowling with them, like for their bowling leagues.
Yeah.
And I'd get like a couple quarters to play, and then those would be gone immediately. And I just sit there like at the arcade machine, not really playing, but pretending to play for hours.
The only ball you were interested in at the bowling alley was the roller ball in Centipede.
Exactly. The best one.
Yeah.
So I, my number 5 again, in chronological order is Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons.
Not a surprise.
Not. It's a little game. Perhaps you've heard of it. But for me, my relationship with the game began when I was like 6 or 7 years old. I remember I would always when my mom would take me with her to go like to Shopko. Shopko is like a Wisconsin-based. I don't know. I think they're all closed down now. Wisconsin-based, kind of like it's like a early Target.
Oh yeah.
Kind of like basic department store-ish like place. And I'd always go over to like the game and the toy area to look at what was there, and they had the Dungeons and Dragons basic set there, like the old red box. Yeah, but the older one. Before they put the cool dragon on it. It was like this weird dragon. I'm looking at it right now. So like this is the book from my copy of the Dungeons and Dragons basic set, but this art piece was on the box. It was kind of like more of like a purpley color. That box is disintegrated, so it no longer exists. But I still have the components, and I just go and I look at that. Like every time we go to the store, I just like make a beeline for it and then just like hold the box in my hand. And then either for my birthday or Christmas or at some point, I don't remember how I got it, but my mom bought me that for a gift. And this is first edition D&D. So, or I guess it was right, not necessarily like chainmail rules, but not too far off. So for like a 7-year-old, like I had no shot of like actually learning how to play this game in any way. So to me, it really just became a like an art book, and I just spent so many hours just looking at the art in this book, which is phenomenal. Like I love this piece here. I've spent so much time looking at this, and like these like the illustration of these flames like really influenced my drawing style, and like this cool like flame bird. I think there's just something to this style of fantasy artwork, or this age of fantasy artwork, that is lost today because everything's so highly rendered and pushing towards realism. But like there's this cool kobold piece here, like this like cool, this like extra little frame kind of built around it. It's not like ultra realistic, but it's just so cool to look at.
Yeah.
And so expressive. So yeah, I would just look at this thing for hours. Sometimes I'd trace some stuff. Sometimes I'd look at it and try to draw it on my own. Yeah, super fun. It also came with this Keep of the Borderlands module, and the great thing about this, again, never played it, but it had this cool dungeon map that comes with it.
Oh, cool. I love those.
Yeah. I mean, this is like, I would spend so much, like just get, give me graph paper, and then I'll start drawing maps. And I did a lot of that too, just making up my own environments, and never really playing for a very, very long time. And then as I grew up and started to get involved in playing games a little bit in high school, met some friends who enjoyed playing some tabletop games, some role playing games. I played some Shadowrun, and I think I played some like Vampire the Masquerade or Werewolf.
White Wolves.
Yeah. But still never really playing. And I played Mech Warrior and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Those systems were pretty fun. But it never. And then I designed a game, a role playing game based on my experience with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Mech Warrior. I think I still have that someplace. It was a percentile system that I built, and I built like the whole like equipment codex and monster manual for it, and had it in a 3-ring binder. And I ran a couple of games with that role playing system. But so this was going to be one of my other games on the list, but I decided to wrap it into this. Then I played Baldur's Gate in the late 90s, which I had the before I go into that, like the first thing I bought with my first paycheck ever when I was 14 years old, I worked as bagging groceries at a Meijer in Dublin, Ohio, and across the street was a hobby store, and I got my first check, which I think I remember being for like $53 or something like that, $52. I cashed it at the grocery store, walked across the street, and then bought the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Player's Handbook.
Nice.
For D&D. But again, no, I didn't have anyone to play with, and no one else was like there to teach me. So I just had these books, and I had them, just carried them with me. So then when I was like in my 20s, I played Baldur's Gate when that came out. And that is have you guys played Baldur's Gate?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, but both that and number 2.
Yeah. Both phenomenal games. But they're really hard to play today because they're just super punishing, like D&D. So, but that game, like it was such a faithful adaptation of the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons rules that I finally learned how to play by playing Baldur's Gate. And then it really inspired me to like, oh, well, now I understand how this works. Like, not only did it teach me, just the basic mechanics, but then also how to build stories and encounters. So then I started DMing for my girlfriend and my brother, and just and my cousin too. Just like I was just trying to grab anybody who would like sit down at a table and play with me. But I spent a lot of time world building. We didn't really play very much. But then D&D 3rd edition came out, and then there was the kind of this like renaissance around D&D, and I really started to get into buying those books again. And then shortly after that, I was playing Magic the Gathering at a local game store. And I was playing Magic at the time, like for a few months. And this guy came up to me, who I'd seen him there a couple times, and we just finished a game. And he invited me. He said, "Hey, I'm putting together like a role playing group to play D&D. Do you want to come and play?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course, sure, yeah, awesome." I barely knew him. Like I just met him like a couple times at the Source Comics and Games, and so he invited me. We played a epic level campaign. So like my first D&D campaign was playing epic level. I made the worst character choices. I played an arcane archer, which is like a combination, sorcerer, fighter.
My favorite kind of character.
Yeah, but I built it totally wrong. Like my spells sucked because I could never hit anything. Because it was, I was like 20th level character that because of the way I split my levels I made some mistakes.
Well, I mean, like the extremity of the scaling in that game comes into clear picture at level 20, right? Like,
yeah.
If you have not optimized your character, you are like an order of magnitude behind.
Yeah, but through that, his name's Aaron. I'm still friends with him today. All the guys that I met in that group, still friends with today. It was like 20 years ago, and it opened me up to a whole new, I think, experience. Made a bunch of friends, and really kind of got. And a guy I met through role playing was like the first freelance illustration gig I ever did. Was doing these like pencil drawings of magic tokens, like different creatures that were turned into stickers. And that was like my first, industry experience doing those illustrations for him. And then, so it's and we'll get into later. Just played it a few days ago. So yeah, it had a big impact on my creative life and my personal life. So Dungeons and
That's
Dragons.
so cool.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the story. I love the story of, the longing to play it and then finding your community. Super cool. I loved hearing that.
Hearing you talk about it makes me want to revise my own list and include D&D 3.5, which is my first entry point into D&D while at FFG.
Well, that was some of when I was trying to think about my games. That was some of what I was contending with. Is I've obviously, like some of these big games like D&D have a very extreme influence on my life and who I became. And, I was trying to kind of balance that against, it's like I've played, I don't even want to count how many hours of World of Warcraft, but did it influence me as a designer or, and so trying to kind of weigh that. And so some of my choices, are influenced by the fact that I played something like Dungeons and Dragons, but might not necessarily be the same. So I'm excited to talk about my role-playing stuff in future weeks, and I might call back to some of your D&D stuff, Andrew.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Well, look forward to the rest of our countdown in the upcoming weeks. And should we do an abbreviated version of stuff we're into?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just do a quick, let's tell the people what we're into right now. This week, I did something new. I think it's going to be a new hobby for me. I made my first Gundam model.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
I went over to Hub Hobby.
Which scale is that one?
It's called the high. What's it called? The high grade. I think it's not 1/44th. The smallest one. It's the smallest one, but it was super fun. I've never.
Did you
done
have to glue
like
it, or
that.
is that snapped together? Is that?
Yeah, I think every Bandai Gundam is a snap together thing.
Oh, okay.
So you cut them out. It's fun clipping them out and following the beautiful instructions. They're just so amazingly designed. I'm not even into, this kind of anime or any anime in general, really, but I have no idea who this character is or anything, but it's so cool. There's so many points of articulation on it. It's just, I don't know have you guys ever made one of these?
I haven't.
They're feats of engineering. They're astounding.
Just the way the molds are made, just looking at those and seeing how they orchestrate everything. It was a great experience. Just maybe 4 hours of pure focus. It's good.
Yeah, I've always wanted to get one of those. They look amazing. Just fun shelf items, display items.
Yeah, in the process. This one was $20.
Oh wow!
I may get the next grade up, which would be about $50, and I can see myself someday buying a $300 one and giving
Slippery
it a go.
slope.
It's really cool. I loved it. New hobby.
Don't get into Warhammer.
Sure.
Yeah, I was going to say that process of building models. It's like miniatures.
Yeah, right. So that's what I've been doing. How about Fisher?
Yeah, well, to Evan's comment about not getting into Warhammer, that's been I play Warhammer 40K and I play the Tyranid faction, which are kind of the space bugs. They're kind of like the Zerg from StarCraft or the bugs from Starship Troopers, that kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And they just got a new codex this week, which is basically their set of rules for that specific army. They kind of every month they'll release a new codex for each army to kind of update them. And I just got my update. This is probably the biggest overhaul the army has gotten in 8 years. So it's pretty exciting to kind of get, I have hundreds of these models that I've all hand painted. This thing is an investment of time and creative energy to paint all these, build and paint all these things. And so getting new rules kind of gives them new life and lets me keep playing with all my old models. So it's been kind of fun to read through the book and build out hypothetical lists. There's no quote unquote meta yet, nobody's solved the codex. So you get to kind of explore it and try different things. And I have 3 different lists that I think are contenders right now that I'm going to try out here when I'm healthy enough to see people in person again and play a game. So I'm excited to give it a play. Right now I'm just building. There was one new model. One new model came out
Cool.
that
Cool.
it can implant eggs in enemies, like kind of like a xenomorph, and then they burst out of the enemies later in the game. So I'm excited to make little egg tokens and then taunt people when I have a chest burster inside of them. So real gross stuff.
Badass. Cool. Evan, what are you doing?
Yeah, well, I haven't for the longest time made my art to throw up on my Instagram just because I've been making art for Earthborne and I can't wait to be able to share all that when it's published. But I am trying to make time for myself in the mornings before I start working to just do like some warm-up illustration. So I've been doing that, and I've been recently in my ongoing RPG game every Thursday with my friends. My current character has just got an upgrade to their clothing, so now I have to make a new illustration for my role-playing character in this cool new outfit. So
Awesome.
that's pretty much it.
Nice.
That's what's your Instagram handle?
It's Saltcoff, all lowercase, all one word, Saltcoff. And
Where did that
already
name come from?
Is there a story behind that name?
Well, yeah. There is a story. It's such a dumb name now that so Megan, my wife, talked me into getting Instagram just to share all my art, and I didn't take it seriously. And I get this thing where if I have too much salt, I cough. I don't know why. It's like a, I don't know what's
like
going on in the back of my throat. Yeah. So that's what I made, and now I regret it because
I like it. It made me think of like you coughing from you're going to be drowning and you come out, you're like in the ocean, coughing out the salt water.
Cough.
That's what I always thought of.
I'm drowning in my own creativity. No, I'm just kidding.
A little bit.
Oh yeah, your old RPG character illustrations on here. These are awesome.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. One of those characters is named Harlan, and he's a wizard trucker because our games take place in a post-apocalyptic world universe. Mm-hmm. And he died because another player triggered a nuclear explosion, and he didn't escape the effect radius. So that's when I introduced my new character. So,
Rip Harlan.
Yeah.
Awesome. Andrew, what you got going on?
Well, I think I mentioned last episode that I was going to be DMing for my kids and their friends, so I did that. Not this past, not on Easter, but last Sunday. Yeah, that was really fun. I started with the D&D Essentials kit, which is one of the starter sets that's out there and has a little like pre-made adventure in it, and yeah, that was pretty cool. It was a little bumpy at first, just because kids being kids. Mm-hmm. But we had a little break. They went around outside for about half an hour, then we came back, and then everyone was like on task. And that was really fun. So yeah, they had a really good time. They're like, "Oh man, can we do this again next weekend?" I was like, "Well, next weekend's Easter, so probably not." And then they're like, "Well, how about the weekend after that?" I was like, "Well, I'm going to be out of town." They're like, "Well, I'm teaching them early about how hard it is to have a regular group going." But when I get back, I think we're gonna try to make it a regular thing. So I'll be doing it. I think
That's
probably
exciting.
like every Sunday. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun dusting off the old DMing skills. So I have some work to do, but it's kind of like riding a bike. And then I also started playing Slay the Spire, new game
for the first time,
new hot game. Yeah. Well, it was free on PSN this past month, so I was like, "Fall, finally!" I can't not try it now. It's free.
Has it grabbed you yet?
Yes.
All right. I remember the first time you and I ever talked. You were like, "I don't know if I'd like it."
Well, I didn't like
you would.
I didn't like the look of it.
No.
And it's it's grown on me a bit. It's not so bad, but yeah, mechanically it's super addicting.
So good.
Yeah, it's very good. It just time just evaporates while you're playing that game.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Yeah, so I've lost like a couple weekend mornings to play Slay the Spire.
Yeah.
I finally got through one run
at first.
What's that?
Oh, I said the art bothered me a lot at first when the character is looking at the bonfire, the back of their head drives me nuts. Check that out.
Yeah, I know. It's all right. They did what they could with their resources, and I think they put him in the right spot because the gameplay is really, really good, and super addicting. I finished one run with the poisony character, poisoner knife character, and that was pretty fun. It was a little anticlimactic, the ending. I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's it.
You're kind of overpowered, or that final scene.
Yeah, just like it wasn't very satisfying to finish a run, but obviously there's
more
to do. Yeah, so I unlocked that new character, the monk with the stances, and been trying to figure that out. That seems really powerful if you can get the right rhythm to it. But
the diversity between each character is amazing to me. It feels like a totally different game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like handled that so well.
Yeah, it's really fun. So I've been enjoying it. So that's how I've been spending my video game time. So Elden Ring is taking a back seat to Slay the Spire right now.
Good. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Get a hold of us through email at info@earthbornegames.com. Reach out to us in the YouTube comments, Facebook, all that. Subscribe. And thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.